that we maybe not have chose our profession, but maybe our profession chose us. How many of you are more inspired now than you've ever been before to make the difference in the life of children, making America one of the greatest countries in the world as it relates to educators? By show of hands. How many people are proud to do what it is you do? Fantastic. So let me kind of set some ground rules for you right up front. I am high functioning ADD, and I am not taking my Ritalin this morning, so that means that, listen, it's going to be ongoing, high motivation, high energy. I am not one of those Keynote speakers. How many of you guys been to in-service trainings where it is absolutely flatline? I mean, from the beginning, the time you sit down, boop, all the way. Anybody ever been there? This is not one of those presentations. So let me warn you, I love what I do. I'm more inspired now than I've ever been before because I understand that what you do matters, that you are important, that you are significant. So today we're going to talk about significance. We're going to talk about what it means to make a difference in the life of kids. I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of evidence-based data. You guys get enough of that. Today is about connection. Today is about presence. Today is about understanding and realizing that you have made the biggest difference in the lives of children and that you are here for a greater sense of purpose. And that when we do this the right way, the reciprocal of that is kids succeed. You know, I love Dr. Coates. His message of enthusiasm, his message of optimism, it reigns right in my spirit because that is what it is about. It is about passion. It is about connection. It is about understanding that we've been given a gift, and the greatest gift is to inspire America's greatest resource, and that is our children. And when we can do that, we become heroes. And sometimes when we look at heroes, we think of heroes as Superman or Spider-Man or Wonder Woman. But a hero is the person sometimes behind the scenes that never gets the credit. Sometimes the heroes are the people who work every day, who never get the thank yous, who never get the attaboys, who never get the acknowledgement that they deserve. But today I want you to realize that you are the ultimate hero because I stand before you as the reciprocal of what happens when education works. See, my standing here today should not have happened, but I'm here because somebody told me that I could. Because so many years ago, a teacher inspired in me and sowed a seed in me that said that anything was possible. And so when you begin to understand that, you begin to realize that you're here for a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of deliverance of something special to children. And that is amazing. So am I an optimist? You better believe I am. Am I someone who believes the impossible? You better believe I am. Why? Because the fact that I am standing here is impossible, but yet I'm here because you told me that I could. And that's an amazing thing. See, when we look at education, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes we forget the essence of why we do this. Sometimes we get so caught up in the evidence-based data and so caught up in the test scores, which that's important, and we'll talk about the importance of that. But sometimes we forget why we became educators. Is anybody in this room doing this for the money? Of course, it's the money, right? It's the big dollars you guys are making in education. I mean, my God, at the Leona Group, the rumor is, Tony, is that you guys get paid more than any other educators in the country, starting out at $100,000. Am I right or wrong? This is the wrong group? Not the right group, right? Exactly. So the question is, why do you do this? What is the essence behind what it is you do? So I want you to challenge yourself this morning to open up your mind. If I say something that you can use, and I say use it. If I say something that you can't use, totally omit it. It's okay. But the number one thing I want to talk about today are three primary points: purpose, passion, and presence. Understanding why we're here, understanding how do we become re-passionate about what we do, and how do we have presence with every child? How do we interact with every child, but we show up every day totally present, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. See, a lot of our children, they suffer from parents and situations in their life where nobody's present in their life. But when you can have a kid who has someone who's present in their life, who believes in them more than they can ever believe in themselves, who sees in them the future of what they can become, that's when you start to have phenomenal change in kids. Because see, for me, I look at what I do, and I look at the essence of the teachers that I work with. That is what I do. That is why I'm here. I'm here to serve educators. I'm here to serve those who work in child welfare. I'm here to serve those individuals who come to work every day with a greater sense of understanding and a greater sense of purpose of why they do what they do. Because in this game, it's not about the money, it's about the outcome. And when we have outcomes in this game, when we have children who succeed, when we have children who win, we begin to change the fabric of this great country, and we begin to change the fabric of our communities, and we begin to see some things that most people will tell you that you will never achieve. Because understand, there are a lot of doubters out here in this world. There are armchair theologians who will tell you that what you do doesn't matter. There are people out here who do a lot of teacher bashing, and I'm an anti-teacher basher. I hate people who bash teachers. And they bash them. They say, oh, it's the teacher's fault. It's the teacher this, it's the teacher that. Well, you know what? Teachers have a role, but you can't do everything. But what you can do is enough to inspire a child to be great. To look at his or her life and to see a potential in them that they probably could never see. Because see, my mother, she was a prostitute. My mother, when I was born, she was 24 years of age. My mother had to make a very critical decision. How does she take care of two kids? Two kids, my older brother and myself, being a woman who was of the streets, being a woman who had a lot of trauma in her life, being a woman who didn't know how to connect with people, being a woman who had a low self-esteem. So from her womb, I went directly into foster care. My mother made the decision to place me up for foster care, so I went directly from her womb. My mother, from what they tell me, never even held me. I was born, the nurse held me, my mother looked, she cried, I left. And that's the way it worked. So the question is, there are a lot of kids who come into this profession, a lot of kids that we serve that come from trauma. 7 years in and out of various foster homes, and at the age of 7, I was adopted by my last set of foster parents. But of course, they were much different types of foster parents. They were what we call old school. Everybody say old school. Old school simply meaning that my adopted father was born in 1918, and my adopted mother was born in 1930. And my parents were old school, traditional parents. My dad was a blue-collar worker. My dad worked a factory job. After he came out of World War II, he worked for Frigidaire and then went to work at a factory, and that's all he did. My dad was a provider. My dad was not emotionally connected. Though my dad was there physically, he was not there emotionally. So I had an emotional disconnect with my father. My mother, on the other hand, was a disciplinarian. My mother ran the house. She was what we call the floor general. Like in basketball, the floor general. My mother was the floor general, and my mama was crazy. Anybody got a crazy mom in the house? Just by a show of hands. Okay, very crazy mothers by a show of hands once again. Exactly. My mother was psychotic, which simply means my mama didn't play. Mother, when she said something, it was like E.F. Hutton, everybody listened. And I realized that when I came home one day and my father came home from work. My father worked a very hard job, and my father comes in, and somehow this day dinner was not ready. And so my father comes in and he walks in. I said my father walked like this, right? So my father walked in and he's looking around, and my father's hungry. So my father just so happens to say, you mean to tell me that a man goes to work every day and I come home and ain't no food on the table? What's going on? I'm hungry. I'm ready to eat. Man in the house needs to have food on the table. That's what my father talking about. Man in the house needs to have food on the table. And so my mother, here's what she said, and I realized then who was really in control. So my mother, who had mad attitude, everybody say mad attitude. My mother simply looked at my father and she says, oh, for real? Okay, Mary, let me tell you something. Okay, so I've been working all day just like you, okay? And you think you will come in here and tell me that dinner on the table? Let me tell you something. You may be man of the house, honey, but I am the neck, because the neck can turn the head any way it wants to go. When my mother said that, when she said that, I knew who was in control. So guys, you know what I'm talking about, right? So my mother was the one who ran the house, and my parents, they did the best they could with what they had, but it was hard and it was rough. See, my father was an alcoholic. My mother had some issues that she had dealt with in her childhood, and my mother was one of those people who just when she drank, she became a different person. So there was a lot of domestic violence in my house. There was a lot of disconnect in my house. My mother and father, on Friday nights, when they would have card night and invite people over, I knew that by 11, 12 o'clock, once the alcohol was consumed, that something catastrophic was going to happen. And that was the lifestyle. That was just the way it was. Domestic violence was an everyday thing in my house, and disconnects and feeling abandoned and feeling lonely was how I grew up. But you know what? It's okay. Because a teacher instilled in me, and she taught me that it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what people call you. All that matters is what you listen to and who you listen to. And that reigned true in my life. And so when I looked at that, I said to myself, you know, I was one of those kids who was broken. I was abused, I was afraid, I was insecure, I was special ed, I was depressed, and I felt abandoned. Because see, I wasn't a very good student. When I went to the second grade, I started having academic problems. When I went to the third grade, I failed. And when I went to the third grade and I failed, they held a meeting, and my parents came in and they asked my parents, well, what's wrong with Mark? We don't understand why he doesn't connect. We don't understand why he's introverted, why he doesn't talk, why he doesn't do good on his tests. And my mother and father were going back and forth. Of course, they never mentioned the fact that there was domestic violence going on and all these other things that I was deficient in. And my parents were like, well, we're not really sure. He was in foster care, and after we adopted him, and all of a sudden, when they heard the word foster care, when they heard the word adoption, then all of a sudden they realized that something was different. And I remember the counselor looking at my parents, and they said, well, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett, you do understand that kids like this, well, you really can't expect too much. So we're not going to expect too much out of the Mark. We're just going to put him in special ed because kids like him, that's where they belong. It was the perception. It was the label that was placed on me. And all of a sudden, when that label was placed on me, then all of a sudden life changed. And a lot of children that we face today, a lot of children that we serve today are labeled. And let me tell you something about labels. Labels can be dangerous. Labels can be catastrophic. Labels can put people in boxes where they stay there forever. But here's the thing. Labels can also be rewritten. As Dr. Coates said, those things can come off the door. And we have the power to paint our own picture of what we want. We have the power to paint our own Picasso. Life is all about how we think, how we feel, how we engage. And the thing about it is, one person asked me once, they said, Mark, where is the greatest nation in the world? What is the greatest nation on earth? I ask you that question too. Where do you think the greatest nation on earth is? Okay, Andy, he says America. Would everybody agree with Andy? Everybody say, hey, Andy. Andy's like, yeah, whatever. Okay, so America, where else? Where's the greatest nation on earth? You know what, let me tell you guys something right now. I see right now that you guys are not going to engage me, so if I have to do karaoke and do strip poker, whatever, look, talk to me. Okay, what is the greatest nation on earth? America, absolutely. Some people believe,